Anyone who said it doesn't lied. Sorry, guys.
I mean, fuck yeah, batters.
There's a way to start the morning for you.
Nobody wants to get thumbed to
You're
death.
listening to Inside
Don't feel
Real
bad. His
Estate,
mic check
your
word is
source for all
boner,
things
so
mortgage
you're
and
good.
real estate related. The show that brings you all the hottest topics and insights
God,
directly from those who know it most. Now sit back and enjoy the show.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Apostolakis, Salvatore Kuzmano, Brad Weisgerber. We are Inside Real Estate. We've got a very, very, very special guest, Renee Acho. I don't say your middle name. Lacio. Was that your?
It's my maiden name.
It's your maiden
Lacia,
name.
yeah.
Got it. Okay.
My dad gets mad if we don't use that.
Totally understand. Totally understandable. So today's a very, very, very special day for another reason. It is Mr. Salvatore Kuzmano's birthday.
Yay! Thank you.
Where's my birthday?
Thank you.
Yeah. How old are you, Sal?
30.
30.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Very successful dude for 30 years
Slowing
old.
down.
Yeah.
Slowing down.
Don't say that.
Yeah. Arthritis starts setting in around 35. You'll be all right.
20s were heaven.
20s were great.
heaven,
30s will be better for you,
But
man.
today we turned a page.
Yeah, today's a different page.
Sorry.
We have a really good show today. We're going to hit on some topics. Zillow teaming up with Keller Williams. That's going to be really interesting. I don't know that it's necessarily like that, but we'll talk about it. Stock market took a poop yesterday, dropped 800 points. And Airbnb getting into the home building business. So before we get started, please go to our website, irepodcast.com. Go to Stitcher, go to all the podcast places, like us, share. We appreciate it. That's the particulars. Renee Acho is the owner at Keller Williams Domain, one of the top agents in the area by far. Does really good work. Been in the business for 12 years. You've been recognized by Crain's, Our Magazine, Wall Street Journal as a top 1% producer. Tons of awards. I'm not going to inflate your head any bigger than it already is. No, I'm kidding. But no, Renee's a very top-tier agent. She's been in the business for a while. You were a teacher at one point.
I was. I started out my life as a high school teacher and taught at Farmington High School for about 10 years. And then life took me on a journey that I didn't expect, and here I am. Never expected to do anything other than teaching, but you make plans and,
It's really interesting because teaching and real estate, I mean, very different professions.
Totally different professions. I mean,
My wife's a teacher, by the way. It's a worthless career.
I happen to think it was. I thought it was.
not
It was my
worthless.
passion. I loved it, but it's difficult. And for me, there were some changes in my personal life and some health issues with a child that turned into a need for real financial stability. And, you go where life takes you.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate reality for all the. And I was joking. Teachers are very underpaid, undervalued, underutilized. I know for my wife, and so obviously, I'm trying to babe, real estate maybe.
It's funny because you'd be surprised how many ex-teachers are real estate agents, and a lot of people say that they make it's a good combination because there's something about. I think the way that you method what you do as a teacher and the same, approach.
I will tell you that the teaching system itself is so broken.
There's so much broken about so many of our systems.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
quite frankly, you leave anything like that in the hands of government strictly, and you have inefficiencies that can't be really dealt with. So it's a struggle for teachers. You're fighting a lot of different battles, and what your real intent is to help kids learn, and that doesn't seem to be what's offered. So it's hard. It becomes something that I think a lot of the really strong teachers get burnt out of quickly.
Yeah, because it's frustrating. Yeah.
But to your point, I think, being a teacher is great experience for real estate because you have to teach your clients. You got to teach, those who work with you or under you as far as your team goes. And
there's a lot of
hard.
education in real estate.
I think people underestimate how hard it is to teach someone what you do.
It's very hard, and I think that is one of the components that lacks in my industry. Much like any kind of brokerage system, you have people who can get a license for a very reasonable cost. I mean, it's probably under $500 when all is said and done to get your real estate license, and then you go and you can basically walk in anywhere and get hired, and just at that point, it depends on the brokerage that you're at, what they're going to do to educate you. Most of them just give you the seat, give you the book, and say, hey, have at it, go online, figure out what you need to do.
A phone book.
Basically, it used to be a book. It was like a phone book. But there's a very big disconnect, and I think that's what gives a lot of our industry lack of credibility, because you have just about anybody can do it, and I love my favorite phrase from people when they say I'm getting into real estate is, oh, I wanted to get into real estate because I love houses. And I want to tell them, well, then go be a decorator or a builder because this is so little about houses. It's more about understanding people's needs and wants and really helping them to, design what it is that's going to be best for them. Sometimes they don't even need, but you have to educate your clients. And if you're not an educated agent, you're doing a disservice to your client. And there's a huge disconnect because the training's not always there.
Yeah,
Right,
no.
so
The
true.
training is very important in the industry, and there's not really a lot of good avenues for it. So, speaking of which, you started Domain in Birmingham, Michigan. Which, by the way, just so the audience all across the country in Sweden, I love you guys in Sweden. Birmingham is kind of a bubble, right?
Bubble.
Keller Williams wasn't really in that part. It was all kind of boutique-y type places, and then all of a sudden, Keller Williams opened up their Domain office, which, by the way, is an absolutely stunning office. And it was like, well, let's see how they do. Like, there was a lot of rumblings, like, oh, they're not going to really make it.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. When Keller Williams and I opened with a group, there's a team of us that did this, but my biggest hesitation was I had my market is the high-end market. My average sales over $1 million for this area. For those of you who are not in Michigan, it's a big number here. But Keller Williams had tried it and failed several times in these higher-end areas because they are considered more of a lower end entry level agent in Michigan. Now, nationally, they have a completely different reputation, but here, for some reason, that seemed to be those offices that opened. And so when they came to me and a couple of my other colleagues and they said, we want to do this, we said, well, you have to be luxury. It has to be a luxury arm. You can't just open a regular KW. And they said, that's what we want to do, and that's why we're coming to you, because the few colleagues that they approached along with myself were high-end boutique agents that said, all right, let's platform this. And we as a group created the look, the feel, the fit, and became, the concept was, the Lexus to the Toyota or the Lincoln to the Ford. Both can exist, but they have to exist differently. And you have to know your audience.
You had to rebrand.
We did. We rebranded. We pulled a lot of what Keller Williams traditionally had done out and said, this isn't going to work here. And the good news is we collaborated as a team, and we are now we are the only office in Birmingham that has actually grown. We've grown over 30% this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's been, what we're doing is working.
And
They gave you that flexibility to kind of take out some of their content?
So Keller Williams has some, obviously they're going to have some very specific parameters as far as what you have to do, but they're really flexible. Their whole platform at Keller Williams is that you are your own agent and you are going to build your own personal brand, and they have a ton of flexibility that allows that. And that does work for certain people, but for what we wanted to create a cohesive brand and dual brand. We want to brand our brokerage and, of course, allow the agent to be branded, but not for one to water down the other.
Right.
And so, yes, they gave us the flexibility. We designed and created the components that we felt were paramount to having what looked and felt and works as a luxury brand. And listen, in 2 years, we now have 171 agents. So
Yeah, it's worked for sure.
it works. But
171 agents?
171 agents.
That's a lot of agents.
It's a lot of agents. We keep expanding our office because we didn't anticipate this kind of, we're of course hopeful and we continue to grow. But the biggest differentiator, I think, between the brokerages that I have historically been with, and listen, I've been with a few, most brokerages are what we talked about. You lead from a broker who might not be as active as an agent, and they are the principal, if you will, to use a school analogy. Keller Williams, our slogan at KW Domain is built by agents for agents. We are all agents. The partners are all agents. We are
active.
We are active, and we have Agent Leadership Council, which is any agent that wants to be a part of it. 10 agents who bring to us daily what their needs, what their wants, what are the strategies. And so it's very much a learning, educational environment. Contrary to what we were just talking about, I've never seen anything like this in my career. Had I known this existed and could platform 12 years ago, I'd have a completely different business.
It makes a big difference when you have a leader that's in the trenches and active and
the-
knows what's going
The
on.
owners of Domain, you get their mailers. The owners of another.
You never hear
big
of them.
It's
You don't
like,
know who
yeah,
they
like,
are, yeah.
Who's the owner?
Yeah.
When's the last time he sold a house?
Right.
He's not. He's collecting checks and saying he'll be there.
Golfing.
I will tell you
Which
that
is pretty nice, I'm sure.
It's-
But
yeah,
at the
it's
same
great to
time,
be
it doesn't
there.
build a long-lasting brokerage.
You just
right?
don't
People leave.
understand. If you're not out there, you don't understand. This is such a moving industry. I mean, this target moves, the needle moves every 15 seconds, right? What the market's doing. Is it strong? Is it weak? Is it this? And the trends that are in there and what's happening. If you are not in the thick of it, you can't help the agents around you to build what they're doing. And if someone came to you and asked a question about what's a pocket listing or what's this or what's that, it's not that these brokers don't know that, but their job's a little different than when you're an agent trying to help other agents. They're sitting in a different seat.
Well, right now, I feel like the biggest thing that I hear amongst agents lately is complaining about splits, right? And well, I can go
hear this
here,
all
I'll
the
get
time.
95, I'll
get
get
more
100,
money.
I'll do this.
I think it's
and then
just starting to.
they do it, and they're like,
Same thing in the mortgage
oh man,
industry.
I don't have any support. I got to do this. What I don't know how to do that, and it's like, well,
What's
that's
that
what you
split
paid the
worth?
split for.
Yeah.
You know, the split is your overheads. Sometimes, not all the time, right? Sometimes you have a bad split, but a lot of times that split is
Sal,
worth
what's a
paying.
split for people that don't
A
know?
split is what you what you give to the house, right? So you have on a commission, you split that commission anywhere between 50-50 is, for really the newer agents, all the way up to maybe 80-85%. And then there's those brokerages who will say after you hit a certain number, call it
They're capped.
20,000, they're capped. But
Yeah.
here's the caveat to that. And this is what we did that I think, again, Keller Williams is so unique in doing. For me, I had been the top producer at my offices for 7 years at Sotheby's and some of these other agencies. The problem was I never got a true 100%. So I'm feeding into the pot at whatever that is, 7%, 10% always. And it gets to the point for agents after you do a certain number, you're like, what
am
the
I paying
hell?
for?
What,
Yeah.
okay, I'm paying the same thing that the guy sitting
Getting
next
no
to me is
value
doing.
back.
And he's got all the same, luxuries and benefits that I do. It gets a little cumbersome. So what we do at Keller Williams, which I thought this was insanely brilliant, and it says something about the company, we have a true cap. You hit a number, it depends on the office, anywhere between $15,000 to $30,000. You truly get 100%.
You're
It's
done.
not 100% minus the franchise fee,
Right.
minus the desk fee. It is 100%. So going in, your goal is to hit that mark, and for the rest of that year, you really do get that.
That's really genius because we've had agents on, and I've always thought, you tell your stories about how you were an agent and you left to start your own place. You left to start your own. How are these brokers protecting themselves from losing their agents? And it's genius.
Well, you've got to provide services.
You gotta
People
provide value.
will pay, right?
Value.
People
Right.
will pay that cap, that whatever it is, if there's value provided. And I think that's really where a lot of them.
here's what
You're a
people don't get.
capping agent at Domain. Why would you leave? I mean, you got a beautiful office right downtown.
It's not just that,
Birmingham,
though. It's not that. For me, it's like, okay, if I'm like a real estate agent, I did like $6 million last year, right? And I don't have any support. I'm probably going to do 6 or 7 or 5, whatever it is. The next year after that, it's who's going to get me to 10?
And that's the magic,
Right?
question.
That's the question. It's like, where's the value? Like, dude, you can get 100% of nothing. and
That's
it's
right.
nothing. Right?
That's
So-
exactly it. You nailed it.
right? What are you paying for? If you're paying for if you can have someone accelerate your business, who cares?
Well, you should be paying for growth.
Yeah.
You should be paying for the creation of a professional career, and that is truly unique to anywhere I've been. When I see what Keller Williams did, there's Keller Williams University. We have classes in our office daily, 2 to 3 classes. I teach classes. Some of the agents, and it's not classes that are by some outside source. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they're not.
Bob
and
Smith
it's-
is here today.
Right. It's a combination of needs and wants, and the education provided at this office is 100% to build agent businesses, and they have those resources daily. I mean, you can sit at home and listen to there's just anything you want. It's available to you because that's
some
the
agents
model
don't take
Keller
advantage
Williams.
of it.
Listen.
You know
You
what I mean?
bring a horse to the water, right?
what I'm
At the
saying.
end of the day, if you're not gonna, that's
up
the
to you.
most you can do. It's
Yeah.
up to you. And some are going to utilize, and some aren't. In any industry, that's the case.
So before we get into the topics, you are in an interesting segment of our business, especially here in Metro Detroit. What are you seeing in the luxury market? I mean, I think that tends to get hit first prior to, like, if there's a correction in the market, the luxury market kind of is ahead of that a little bit. And when there's a rebound, it's kind of ahead of it too, right?
It's a combination of factors that I've seen. So ultimately, yes, the luxury market is always a slower paced market because you have less. It's a supply and demand situation. You have less demand the higher you get. That's a 1.5 million, 2 million.
Smaller
2.5.
population of
You
people.
don't have. You're right. Exactly. The air becomes thin at that point. However, it's in this area, especially Metro Detroit. I find it so interesting that people will stay within a 10-mile demographic for the most part. Right.
If you're in Birmingham, you're not leaving.
They're in
Yeah.
Birmingham, they're in Bloomfield, they're in Royal Oak, they're in Beverly Hills, they're in the hub of Oakland County. And so in our area specifically, the trends are set by the lower end market, because if the lower end, the 150, 200, if those starter home houses aren't selling as quickly or aggressively, then those people are selling to buy their next step. Those people are selling to buy
It's a
their step
domino.
up, and it's a domino effect. So that ripple effect, we watch the lower end market, the Ferndales, the Royal
Interesting.
Oaks, to see what is going to be on trend for the higher end market. And sometimes that's an indicator, sometimes it's not, but it's all connected. It's connected to the stock market. It's connected to the energy and, the political
Yeah, for
energy
sure.
that's happening. I mean,
sure.
we saw a complete, when I say halt in the last election, not this, the
Nobody did
presidential
anything.
election. Everyone was holding their breath to figure out what was happening. And then in December, which is typically a slower month,
up.
boom, we
Yeah.
were selling things. I was working Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve and selling houses because people were trying to get in front of what they thought was going to change for the political.
Which is a good move, because in the spring it blew up even more.
It blew up
And
more.
in the high end market, those decisions and those policies put into effect will affect those borrowers or buyers much more.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
usually,
economic policy.
a lot
does
of them
affect
are
direct.
self-employed or executives.
tax
you know, those-
implications. There's a lot of
yeah.
things that go into it. One more quick question before we get into our topics. What advice would you have for an agent that might be in the business for 1 or 2 years, who's maybe stuck at 6 million, 7 million? How do they break through that and kind of take their business to the 10, to the 20, whatever it may be?
It's different for everybody, obviously, but what I think it's important for every person to do, and I find it remarkable that a lot of agents don't do this. You've got to create a business plan. You have to have, in my opinion, find yourself a mentor. Who is that person who's at 15, 20, 25 million? See if you can connect with them, figure out where you're at. And I think that it's really an important thing for people to reflect every year what the strengths were. Where did the resources come from? Where did the business come from? What's the main source of revenue? Who are your rainmakers? What worked, what didn't work? Are you advertising in the wrong places and spreading yourself too thin? There's so many things that I think people, a lot, back to what we were talking about, don't get properly trained. So they just throw everything at the wall and see what sticks, and they don't know where they threw it. But if you really have a business plan, and it doesn't have to be 12 pages, it's just an outline. What demographic you're gonna hit, where you're gonna find those people, how you're gonna market to those people, what is gonna be a good use of your time, money, and energy, and then see if you can't find a mentor who is modeling the kind of business plan that you would maybe look for, and see if you can't reach out to them and help them to at least guide that business plan and execute.
That's really important. I mean, just for what I got out of that is be a pro. Like, if you're going to do this, be a pro, do it seriously.
Don't try to figure it out by
No,
yourself.
dude, it's
You're
not-
going to reinvent
No
that
way.
wheel.
No, dude,
Okay.
it's
But
not
I
gonna
do
happen.
think another key thing to have in your business plan is, like you said, you're reflecting at the end of the year, but put that in your plan. Have a date where you revisit and look back on what you did and adjust your plan accordingly.
It should be quarterly, actually. We look
You
at
should
it
have
quarterly.
a date instead of just, whenever I feel like it.
I think the biggest thing is closed mouths do not get fed, right? Like, whether that's picking up the phone and dialing, when you're
Asking for
slow,
help.
asking for help,
Bugging
and
people.
talking to a mentor. Like, I can't believe how many people are in this business who are like just plateauing because they don't reach out to someone who's like doing it.
We have a
you
whole
know?
program called Ignite that is a
Yeah.
1-month program at KW that teaches you exactly that. And I took it. I've been in the business and a top producer. I said, geez, I'm taking this. And it's never, don't stop learning. Don't become complacent. And I think a lot of people, that's where they lose at the high end. They come off the other side. They were the $20 million, $25 million
They'll
broker,
fall off.
and then they fall off. So you can't become complacent.
Right. Well, the past
Better
few years,
evolve.
it's easy to, right?
Oh,
But
yeah.
next couple are going to really shape.
Oh,
All right.
yes,
So
they are.
speaking of KW, this is an interesting story, and I saw it in Inman. Inman reported this. Basically, Zillow, who has a platform where you can buy and sell houses on their website, a lot like Open Door and a lot of these companies that are doing this now. They're really pushing this quite aggressively. An office, the Redbud Group at Keller Williams in South Park in North Carolina, has actually teamed up with Zillow to basically do their sales transactions through their website, which is interesting because the reason this is interesting to me because it's not the first time, but it's been happening. Like the Premier Remax team has done it, Century 21 has done it. We're seeing real estate groups teaming up with Zillow, which is odd. It's really weird to me. They're like the enemy, right? They're going to take your job, right? But I think these people are thinking we better get on the train because that's where it's going. So, being that you're a Keller Williams owner and you're part of that group, what do you think that means? You know what I mean? Like, it's weird to me.
Listen, what's the phrase? Keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, it is true. The reality is Zillow's not going away.
No, dude.
And neither is the internet, thank God. But I guess that could be good. Yeah. It is a true fact that 89% of people will look online for a house before they even contact an agent.
For sure.
The days of the agent being the info source are gone. So people are more knowledgeable when they come to a broker than sometimes the actual broker is because of the information that's out there. So with Zillow being, and it kills us in the industry because Zillow is, quite frankly, not the most accurate. I mean, if you're going to look for something and get information, that's probably not what we would direct you to because it just is not as. But for whatever reason, it's the one people like.
Yeah.
They're winning. People like the use of their platform. It's easy, so you go with it. But I think the reason for Keller Williams connecting with Zillow the way they did is because, well, two reasons. Number one, Keller Williams, Gary Keller specifically, they're always trying to be 10 steps ahead. I mean, their technology, the platforms, it is mind-boggling how aggressive these guys are to try to get in front of any trends in the industry to make sure that their agents have the tools and are ready for whatever's to come. Well, Zillow is, one of those. So by combining efforts, it's you can't beat them, join them mentality. So you have, if anyone's ever gone on Zillow, which most people I'm sure who are listening have,
right.
You know that when you open up a page and you look for a house, you'll see a list of pictures of agents that are called the Premier agents. That's obviously a paid advertisement. You pay for that platform.
A lot.
And it's a lot.
It's a lot of money.
We buy zip codes.
It's a lot.
You buy lead gen. Agents buy that positioning. So the unfortunate part is most of the people who will call assume that picture of that agent is the listing agent.
All the time.
And it's not. So
I
it's
get
false
calls on it.
advertising.
I get calls on it.
Yeah,
I want to buy this house.
We're premier lenders on Zillow or whatever.
Right.
And it's
Hey,
like,
dude,
I want
I'm
to go
not
look
selling
at
that
this
house.
house.
I'll finance it.
Well, and the unfortunate part is it's a bit of a bait and switch to the consumer because they're trying to get direct information from the agent who they think has all of that information, and that's not who they're getting.
Trickery.
It's a little
Well,
bit of
these
trickery.
are how all the, hundreds of millions of dollars of Zillow leads are being bought, right?
And they call me daily to buy more,
Yeah.
buy more, buy more. I don't buy any, quite frankly, because I have a different kind of business philosophy that I
Yeah.
don't have those leads.
But if you're like
but
a 180K agent,
it's a
almost
great
have to.
source. You have to. So what Keller Williams did is they said, wait a minute, we're going to join, but we're going to make anyone who's a Keller Williams agent, you get your own listing. You get your own name and photo on your listing.
It's an exclusive Zillow listing.
It is, semi-exclusive. So what it does is the first picture to come up is truly the listing agent, and then the Premier agents will be underneath, but it's not going to come up the way it populates now, but that's only specific to Keller Williams agents. So Gary Keller and whoever the
That's
powers
awesome.
that be said, listen, we want our agents to get their listings and to be able to answer questions to the consumer who has questions specific to their
And
property.
potentially double dip that sale.
Yeah, I just want to say
potentially
this. So in the third quarter of 2018, Zillow purchased 168 homes and sold 36, generating $11 million in revenue. This is just the tip of the iceberg, right? They're just in a few markets right now, and this is going to really kind of start ramping up. So I feel like it's dangerous, but to your point, it's almost like you have to sleep with the enemy on some level, right? You got to keep them close.
What were those numbers?
168 homes and sold 36. They generated $11 million in revenue. This is they just started this, by the way.
Right. I'm just thinking that number's a little skewed because obviously the net revenue is not there if they bought 100.
All right, dude. I don't know. I mean, the net revenue. What are you talking about right now?
They spent more than they made.
Probably, but they can lose. They can afford to
no,
lose.
I know.
Yeah,
millions.
this is a
It's
beta
the
test
tip
for
of the-
them,
yeah,
right?
it's exactly.
They're just
It's the
beta
They don't
testing.
care. They'll lose millions of dollars on this because we're paying them.
Exactly.
So that's the
crazy.
part. We're funding our replacement.
The message there, and this is what we tell our agents in their office. Here's the message. Yeah, there will always be competitors. I mean, listen, for those of us who are not 30, who've been in the business a little longer, who have watched trends go up and down, what we know is I mean, you guys probably don't remember this, but about 10 years ago, there were the discount brokerages, right? Because it was so easy to sell your house, so
there
easy.
still are.
So there were, give us $500 and we'll list it, we'll put it
list
over.
it.
The bottom line is this. If you are an agent and don't provide service to your clients, there will always be competition, whether it's Zillow or it's somebody else. If you are not an agent who's knowledgeable, who's educated, who your clients feel like they are afraid of doing this without you because you're bringing something to the table,
Value. Lots of
you
value.
have to bring value.
And when you bring value, you can charge for the value.
That's
you
right.
don't
And they're
have- you don't
happy to
discount
give
your
it
own
to you.
Services, yes.
Because they know that they're protected, that you're going to get the job done that they need, and they feel that they're in the right hands. And that is the best message to any broker out there.
Yeah.
Make sure you're providing a service and a value add to your clients, or Zillow or anybody else is going to take it away.
100. It doesn't matter who it is. Right?
Doesn't matter who it is.
Be the best in your profession. You're always going to be okay. That's it. That's the way I look. I think the best garbage man is going to be okay. Right?
Yeah.
If they change garbages. So, anyways, stock market plunges 800 points yesterday. That's a big drop, boys and girls. It like the market's kind of shaky. Like it jumped up the day before because we got a deal done with China.
But we didn't.
The market is skittish. Like it's a little freaked out. And to be fair, it's I think it's overbought a little bit. It's been high. We've been on this it heated up so much. I'm actually happy about this because I think it was overheating. I think the whole market was overheating.
I think everything's overheating.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So at some point, you got to have a correction. I think it's the right thing to do because if we kept going in the way that we were going, we were going to blow up.
And that's true for, I think, the housing market, too.
Yeah.
There's no question. They go hand in hand. We all know
agree.
that.
I
And
agree.
oftentimes it's just a self-fulfilled prophecy in economics, right? You project what you think is going to happen
Yeah, you
and
keep
then make
talking
it
about
happen.
a recession. You're going to have a recession.
Well,
dude.
yeah, you start thinking about it. People say, I better start, spend less, do
Yeah,
less.
but tighten
and then,
up a little bit, and then it
right,
just happens.
it just happens. But the stock market is going to, I think, continue to be volatile because I think there's a lot of uncertainty, again, from the top down. We have in our political system what's happening in trade, what's happening overseas. You've got so many unknowns that are going to continue that volatility. And it's really, I think, more emotionally driven.
All emotional.
So
I agree with that 100%.
yeah, it's emotionally driven in gut sometimes versus real accurate, data.
Understanding the market is understanding human nature.
That's right.
Honestly.
And that market ties directly in with the real estate market. When people are driving around and they start seeing more and more signs, and the sold signs take longer to go up, and they get more nervous, and it does go hand in hand.
100%. But my whole thing is, from a money standpoint, right now, if I'm looking to this, how this affects the real estate market, I'm reading all these headlines. How does it affect my mentality for buying and selling?
Well, a lot of times it's helpful to the real estate market. If the stock market feels too volatile, people will move their money from the stocks to real estate. Real estate, depending on the area, and there's all these, the REITs and all these different kinds of programs that you don't want to buy necessarily a house,
Right.
but you can buy something that is like a mutual fund of homes.
REITs, yeah.
And that is, they'll move into that. It'll go back and forth. Diversifying your portfolio is obviously the best way to keep stable in a very unpredictable time. And this is unpredictable. I think everyone, if we're going to predict something, I think we're seeing a slowdown.
For sure.
We're
I
gonna
agree
see a
with that.
slowdown.
I
And
agree
it's
with that.
to your point, I do believe that it's a necessary correction.
It's absolutely
Yeah.
needed. I will tell you this. Everybody's like, I'm afraid of real estate. It's volatile because everybody thinks 2008. Well, guess what, dude? It rebounded pretty well.
my God.
Every
came
market's
back.
volatile.
Well, and real estate's
And it
tangible,
imploded.
right? I mean, real estate's there. It's an actual asset that you own. You can rent it. You can sell it. You can do multiple things to it. I mean, there's a whole secondary market with notes and things like that people get into when the stock market
It's
is
a pillar
right?
of our economy, a huge pillar. And that's why in 2008, when it imploded, it was so catastrophic. We're not going to see that again.
No, and I think that's the question I get all the
And
time.
it's not happening.
2008, 2008,
Stop thinking
2009.
about it.
The reality is 2008 and 9 was a perfect storm of so many sources coming from,
Bad loans.
Oh my God, bad
horrible,
loans
crazy
and
loans.
and
Bad
interference
regulation.
from AIG and these and that. It just was ridiculous what was happening and how that was allowed to just implode our entire economy. But what we're seeing today, or what I believe we're going to see in the next 18 months, is a correction. It's a typical correction. If you look historically over 10-year trends of anything, you'll see, an up and down and up and down. We took a crash in 2008, but those, I think we know that there are now laws and guidelines and things that are in place to prevent what we ran into with that perfect storm in 7, 8,
We learned
9.
from it.
We learned from it.
Yeah.
It's been corrected. I think it got overcorrected for a while.
Yeah.
I think people have what I call selective amnesia, and they, forget that maybe they shouldn't, overextend because everything's easy. It's easy. So you will continue to see that, but it'll be a correction,
It'll
normal,
be a softer
healthy
landing. Yeah.
correction.
It'll be a softer landing. I am absolutely sick of hearing all these like as you see these headlines,
Doom and gloom.
the biggest drop in the, and I'm like, dude, it's not going to be catastrophic. We will survive. We had one of the worst situations of all time in 2008. We're all sitting here doing a podcast on real estate.
And do you remember? I don't know if you remember this. Mitch Albom, I think it was,
Yeah.
did a whole article on Detroit in that year, and it was someone said the last one out, turn out the lights. Right? They thought Detroit we're going to go into Middle Earth. If you remember, it was serious. If you remember that Eminem, it wasn't Eminem. It was he was in it,
The
but it was the
Cadillac.
Chrysler
Or the
commercial,
Cadillac, yeah.
and Eminem was doing, and that commercial was so intense because it really, for
was
those of us who are
powerful.
Detroiters,
I remember that. It was during
and
the Super
we
Bowl.
saw those during the Super
Yeah.
Bowl, and it said, "This is what we do." And if
got
anybody
chills,
would
yeah.
have predicted 10 years later what Detroit was going to look like now,
It's not Middle Earth.
it is far from
It's a mini
it,
Manhattan right
and
now.
it
It's
is
crazy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
booming. I mean,
Yeah.
we should have all been buying.
We're
up,
idiots.
total
Yeah,
idiots.
it's hindsight.
And we're
I
not
had
in
a-
real estate. Like,
yeah,
what
I
the
know.
hell?
Like we could have bought a
I
million
know, I
things.
had a conversation with a client yesterday. He was like, I don't know about buying this condo. I'm like, how much is it? It's like 180. I'm like, jump
Buy
on
it.
it. Yeah, things gonna
Yeah.
be worth like 300 grand in a couple of years.
It's
Yeah.
insane.
Sal's taking notes. Where is it at?
Because that's a whole different market separate from the everything else,
suburbs,
right?
yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
like there's actually something that's influencing it right there.
It's Detroit's even taken away from Royal Oak. People are moving down
Absolutely.
there.
It's
yeah.
taken away from Birmingham.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. People
Yeah.
are going down there.
The young, I mean, it's the hip, cool, vibrant place
It's
to go.
sweet. Have
I
you
mean,
been
I
down
love
there?
going
It's
down
and
there.
there's
crazy.
services,
I
there's
feel like it's just
grocery
getting
stores,
started,
there's
too.
things
And-
that are
Well, what Gilbert has done down there and
It's
the
sick.
Hermanos and
Listen,
and
you can
the
you talk
Illich
you can talk
families
as
are
much shit as you want about them. You really can, but they've pumped. I mean, so much money into that area. I mean, it wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't
not
for
a
that. So
chance.
stop talking bad about them just because you think they make more money than you.
Hey, they earned more money.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I say
Yeah.
you earned more money.
You can still talk bad
it's like
about
the people complaining about the
It's a
I
healthy
always say
check.
this,
Nah.
Checks
people
and balances.
complaining about the
Do
Little
whatever you want.
Caesar guy on top of the Little Caesars arena. It's like,
Really?
That's his house,
Really?
dude.
yeah, that thing was built on hot and ready's, brother.
Yeah.
That's
You know?
right.
You eat it hot and ready? You're
That's
welcome.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Next topic, guys. So this one's really interesting. Airbnb is getting into the home buying business. They're going to start building homes designed for sharing. So this sharing thing, like, Uber of everything, right? You can share everything now. I can share my car. I can share my house. I can share my underwear. I don't know. Right? Like
You can't share your underwear.
Nobody wants
Nobody
it.
wants that.
But basically, I mean, this is really interesting because, so they're saying basically homes today aren't really built for the sharing economy, right? So what they're
They're
going to
not.
do, what they're thinking about doing is creating, technology in the home for sharing, security systems for sharing, like just something very specific. So if I want to buy a home in a hot area, let's say I want to buy a home in Detroit, which I think is a great market for Airbnbs right now. All of a sudden, it's like, well, I buy a condo, but it's not really built for sharing, right? It's a house, right? It's interesting.
Well, what's going to be real interesting is that you're going to, I believe, and this is, who knows, because this is obviously not, right now happening. They're in the midst of it. But you're going to have association issues. You're going to have
Oh, people are going to be pissed.
insurance issues.
Yeah.
How do you insure that? How is it renter's insurance? Is it
Right.
homeowner's insurance? Do you have content insurance? Do you have liability insurance? Do you have or the associations, if you're in a condo, for example, and you have one Airbnb, what is your association document saying about how often you can rent? That's a very typical thing in an association.
They've got to adapt to that
It's
now.
typically a
Yeah.
minimum 6 months to a year because they don't want the rotation.
Right.
Then you have the fear factor of what if you're renting it to some goofball that, is now moved in next to I don't know.
Who knows? It could be
whatever.
anything.
Any weird
there's a-
scenario.
right.
And they are my neighbor, and I've got people rotating in and out of that house all the time. As my neighbor, I'm not comfortable with
Right.
that. So you're going to have, I think, some pushback, but there's going to be areas that are going to be easier to do that in. And I think the concept is great because I do believe it's going to push the hotel market and other ways that we have always considered, just like you said, Uber, the ways that we have thought about business and trends are all changing if we can change it correctly.
It's a really bold move, and it's futuristic, but I think it's going to pay off in the long run.
I mean, it's awesome. The thing, though, that I think they just have to look out for is taking away from the actual Airbnb experience that a lot of people actually look for, right? Like, I would say a segment of people go and it's like, whatever, Airbnb's cheaper, right? It's better. But some people are like, I want to be immersed in the
city
in the
experience.
city,
Right. Yeah,
and
yeah,
the
yeah.
host lived there for 30 years. And,
Right.
they have everything out on the table. Here's cool places to go. I mean, who's going to be the host?
well, it
I
becomes a
think it's still
glorified
owned by
hotel.
the person. It's not Airbnb doesn't own the property. They're just building to sell to you, and then you Airbnb it out. It's not their personal property.
Maybe. That wouldn't make sense. I mean,
So then
That
what's
makes
in it
perfect
for
sense.
them? So they're building it.
unless they're selling it at a
and then they're selling it at a profit, and they're looking at
Well,
they're probably looking at it as like a lease rental opportunity.
no, think about
so
it.
they're setting it up as that.
Yeah.
They're building homes that they can sell for a profit.
Right.
So they're a builder now, and then they also get the revenue from the Airbnb. So it's twofold now.
they're building it
I
designed
mean, it would
to
make
be an
sense,
Airbnb
but they
to
could
open
also
more Airbnbs.
own it and then have all these assets themselves too. So I don't know.
No, literally,
That's a lot of
they're
management.
building
Yeah,
it
yeah,
to
yeah.
sell.
Yeah, they're not going to.
They're
not
building-
gonna hold
they're
it.
not
what
holding the
stops,
assets.
They're not gonna hold it.
That's interesting. Now, what stops anybody from doing that? Why couldn't I go build, or
Nothing.
build that
The
could be
risk.
the trend.
All right, risk.
We're leaving.
The risk
Renee,
is-
we got to talk. Okay, that's the end of the show. We got to talk because that's a great idea.
Okay.
Why don't we do that?
Nobody's-
Why wouldn't
I
someone
was like,
do
why
that?
is he ending that
It's the
so
risk.
abruptly?
Risk versus reward. Airbnb has a vested interest in doing it.
But why wouldn't we
Not
build out
necessarily.
Airbnb?
Why couldn't anybody apply that
Business
philosophy,
model.
business model to doing this?
We build
I mean,
Airbnb
in
ready
theory,
homes.
we could. Yeah.
You build them a little more. I would. Well, I'll shut up.
Well,
I think we're going
We'll
to talk
talk.
about
We're
that.
gonna
Big,
talk
a
about
big thing too is that they have the
I have all
ability.
kinds of ideas right now.
They have
topic.
the ability to build in areas that we have no idea, right? I mean, they
Right.
could be building Airbnbs in Costa Rica, Japan.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
they probably have some kind of a deal when
We
they
don't
sell
know
the
anything.
house.
We could talk
Right.
probablys all the.
I mean, if they were smart, they'd sell the house for a premium, but they'd give them a discount on the.
They've been working on this for
fees.
2 years. We don't know anything.
Conceptually, listen. Here's what's so cool. Even like Zillow, Airbnb, all of these companies are really. I mean, they are getting so creative, and what I love is it's so healthy.
Shaking things
It
up.
shakes things up. It keeps you thinking, keeps you moving. Complacency is no longer something anyone can afford
Well, dude,
to
think
do.
about what we're talking about, right? Just today, right? Zillow changing the market,
Right.
Airbnb changing the market, Uber's changing. There's so much innovation, and this is pointed for everybody that's listening, us in this room. If you're not prepared to innovate and change your game, you will not survive in this business.
you'll
And
fizzle out.
I mean, the whole technology's coming in. You better either be able to assimilate with some of this stuff or create your own stuff. But there's no way that what we did 10 years ago or 5 years
How
ago or
about
even
5
2
minutes
Yeah,
ago?
5 minutes is going to work 5 years
this
from now.
summer,
Right.
It's
right.
over.
No, this
It's over.
It's constantly
you know,
moving.
that market's
It's over.
flipped the page.
Yeah.
It's going to be the hardest lesson for all the broker owners that we were talking about that aren't immersed, that aren't in the trenches, that are out golfing every day. They don't know what's happening. They're going to be gone.
There's still people writing like
hand.
handwritten.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I get 'em.
How many
I get 'em.
people have we worked with that have been like, they worked with us at like UWM or something like that? They're like, yeah, I had, title company, mortgage company, real estate. I was making
Defunct.
$1 million a year.
defunct?
What the hell are you doing here, brother?
Yeah,
Making 40 G's with me.
Well, you didn't
You know,
involve.
like,
I didn't
what are
involve.
you doing?
You got to be ahead of it, man. You got to look for all the landmines and be prepared for them. And if you're not, dude, and even there's a million landmines that I see or we see, but there's millions of other ones that we don't see.
Well, the other thing about all this great innovation, which we are definitely a part of, and it's exciting. There's a lot of scams involved with it
Totally.
too.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Airbnb, just on that note, I had this gorgeous multi-million-dollar house that was listed, and people are putting false Airbnb
Wow.
rentals. So the homeowner gets this knock on the door, and the guy
Oh,
had
dude.
rented the house as an Airbnb, was planning this whole big party DJ, this whole
Whoa.
thing, and had to call it up. Now, here's the killer. This is really what's weird. Normally, you would just think, okay, someone went online and did something stupid.
Yeah.
This person was so brazen. They actually met at the house
Took pictures of the inside.
with the person. They took my pictures off the
Oh,
internet
shit.
and then said, "Yeah, we can't go in right now. There's a renter in it. There's somebody else for the Airbnb. But
Oh, man.
here's
let's
walk the outside."
That's
took
crazy.
the deposit and was gone. So what's really
Genius.
you hope they use their genius for something a little bit more beneficial.
Yeah.
By the way,
What I
criminals are really smart.
But they are so smart. Use your brains
They
for
did.
something perfectly
They did all that
good.
for probably
Yeah.
$1,000.
Yeah.
Right?
$2,000.
Risk getting
But
shot.
the innovation
Right.
involved in doing that is crazy. If they could turn that into something
Take
positive,
your time and
man.
commitment and do something good to generate some better things. But
So
yeah.
now we are on to 3 questions for Renee.
Oh, boy.
This is
Here we
this
go.
is how we end all our shows now. This is a new thing that we do. Question number 1: Are you ready, Renee?
I think. I'm a
Okay.
little-
Who in the industry are you most impressed by in today's market?
Ooh, that's a really, really good
person
question.
or
A
like
person, a
a-
company, a.
It's
a
it's
role?
who is the question. I'm not changing the question. It's who.
There's so many
It's
interpretations.
it's an individual. It could be anything. Just whatever you want.
I'm gonna. This is gonna sound cliche, but I'm actually really the most impressed with Gary Keller.
Okay, that's good.
And I did not expect it. I don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
I was a girl who didn't rush a
everybody
sorority
says
in
that.
college. Like
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you want me? No,
No.
sorry, nonconformist.
But you're impressed.
I'm so impressed by how progressive and how dedicated and how much commitment this company continues to give to their agents. It's mind-boggling to me because I've never experienced anything like that, at least in the industry, and not in teaching either. So without a doubt, the people at the top of Keller Williams have impressed me when I thought for sure I was going to be like, whatever,
outta here.
blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yeah,
blah.
Yeah.
I was so not ready to be impressed by them, and I am
That
very
actually speaks volumes. Actually, more so than someone that drinks the Kool-Aid. It's like, dude, I wasn't expecting it, and then all of a sudden, okay, now I'm
Right.
listening because you add value.
it took me 2 years to agree to go to Keller Williams.
Really?
2 years because
Wow.
I was like, nope,
Nope.
not putting one of those
Nope.
red and white
Nope.
signs in front of my lawns. I mean, I literally, that's what I told them.
Yeah.
And here I am. But
Yeah.
I did
Right.
change the colors a little bit.
Yeah, I noticed that. I did notice that. All right, next question. What scares Renee Acho?
Ooh, a
And
lot
not
of
spiders.
things. Oh my God. What scares me? What scares me? Aside from the obvious, God forbid, kids or
No,
whatever,
that's
whatever.
all
Those
bad.
are all the obvious. But what scares me is that I will become some of the agents that I see who I really, really looked up to. When I got in the
That aren't
industry,
around anymore, yeah.
and that does it like freaks me out because you look at them and they were the agents, right? I remember going to work at one of the offices and one of these people that I mentioned was there, and I was like nervous. I'm like, oh my God,
Right.
she's at the copy machine. It was like a celebrity to me,
Right.
And then now I'm looking and I'm like,
Where'd you go?
holy
Where'd you been?
shit. Seriously? And so that freaks me out because I've watched them go from the top,
Yeah.
kind of sink down, and they're going to fade away.
It's hard to maintain.
So creating the business model that will continue even when I'm maybe
So you're afraid of
too
failure.
tired. I'm afraid of not staying up with what I need to continue to be
You wanna,
innovative.
You want to go out. You don't want to be.
I don't want to fade
You
away.
want your jersey.
You
in
want
the
to decide
stands.
when you go away.
That's
not-
right.
yeah.
You want your
That's right.
jersey hung. You
That's
don't want
right.
to
You don't want to be Allen Iverson.
have a long career that ends up like shit.
It's like, yeah, what did I just do that for?
Oh,
And
she
you
used
go,
to be a killer.
right, right,
you know,
like
That's
like
tough.
there's a eulogy and it's like, well, she was good at one
right,
point, right?
right. No, don't
All
want
right.
that to happen.
Last question. What is your least favorite thing about real estate?
My least favorite thing is also my favorite thing.
Okay.
So it's, and I tell agents this too. The good news about real estate is that there are no hours, and the bad thing about real estate is that there are no hours.
Yeah.
So it's really very, very difficult, and this is something that I've learned and I hopefully continue to build on, is creating balance, because it's really easy to always have your phone attached to you and feel the need to always be doing that. And to create a business that gives you a little bit of balance it's hard. And I've gotten there. I continue to work on it because there's never complete balance. But I think that's my favorite and my least favorite thing is that there really are no parameters. And you constantly feel like you're on call. You know, you're always on. You'll go to a restaurant and someone will come up to you. You go to the bar, you go to a wedding, you go to the grocery store.
With texting now, too, it's like, oh, my God.
Oh, yeah. If you don't answer the phone, then they text you, then they email you.
Well,
You know,
Sunday
all
night,
once.
hey, do you have time?
Carrier pigeon.
Hey,
Yeah.
I mean, people will be like, I'm in China. I can only
Right.
talk at midnight. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah.
well, all right.
I
guess
do
I'm
it.
up at midnight.
some
yeah.
Red
That's
Bull.
right.
Well,
It's
here's
a Red
the thing about that. If you're actually really driven, it's difficult to turn off. But a lot of agents are just like, I'm
Well,
gonna stop at
the
6.
thing is, though,
So
that's probably because I feel the same. Like that's my biggest thing that I love and hate about what I do is, but it's how I built my business. Right, was always being available, always being that guy, and for me to let that go, I feel like I'm letting myself down. Right.
Yep.
And I'm letting deals die, and I'm
You-
giving away
that's getting
business to other
complacent.
people. Right. And
It's
tough.
hard. And they expect you to answer. We have set that precedent. They expect you to be available. And so it is hard. The good news about it, as a mom with 3 kids, I never had to miss a dance class. I never missed a soccer game. I never, I'm sitting in the line at,
Probably you're checking your email during it.
check
though.
the whole time. I mean, there's no question, but you're there. And,
Yeah.
and you can't, nothing's perfect, right? So as a mom who wanted to be with her kids, my choice was to hire an assistant instead of hire a nanny. And I was with my kids.
it's way better. Yeah.
But you balance that, and it's the good news and the bad news of it. So
Right.
yeah.
It's to completely detach though is so hard. I don't know if I've gone on vacation the past 3 years and actually really enjoyed it.
Indeed,
I'm
yeah.
like, back of my head, I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
I sent the loan docs out, but I'm in Spain and I don't have Wi-Fi and I
Right.
need to go find a cafe. And my buddies are like, dude, what the fuck
Yeah.
are you doing? I'm
my job.
yeah.
That's how it
Like,
works.
Well, I can't pay for the plane ticket if I don't do it. So come on, it's tough, but it's also like you said, it's beautiful too.
That's it, Renee. Tell the audience if they're looking to get a hold of you, how they can get a hold of your team, however you want.
Real simple. ReneeAcho.com is our website. You can find us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook. It's Renee Lacia Acho Real Estate Group. And we are out there and available for any questions that you may have. And thank you for having me today.
Renee,
this was a
thank
lot
you
of
so
fun.
much. Thank you so much for doing the show. You didn't have to. You probably didn't want to, but I'm glad you showed up. I really appreciate you have a wealth of knowledge. Renee is one of the good ones. So if anybody is looking, I think Renee is an open book. She's always answering my calls. So if you ever need anything, call her incessantly. So thank you, everyone.
Back to the no balance. Back to the no balance.
Thank you, everyone that's been listening, that's been commenting, that's been giving us reviews. We really appreciate all the support online. Sweden is big. They just would you guys just email me and let me know who you are, because you guys just keep listening to our show. I really appreciate it. That's it, man. We're all done. Oh, Sal, what are you gonna do for your birthday, buddy?
Work.
Well, yeah, that's what he does.
It's 30. It's not 21. So
Well,
that's,
30's a big. 30's
It's
a big one.
It's
a
yeah.
At least happy
no,
hour.
yeah.
30's the new.
You're
the
old,
new 20,
Sal.
by the way. 30 is the new 20.
Yeah.
Your
No, I
life,
think it is.
Life is
No.
gonna start now.
I mean,
No, it doesn't.
Well, it's because you look like you're 50. All right, everyone. We love you. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Listen to the outro.
You've been listening to Inside Real Estate, the nation's top real estate podcast.
Oh, that's
Don't
it.
forget to follow us at irepodcast.com and